I'm not really sure how to start this video. It's probably one of the biggest decisions I've made in my life, and this may affect me for the rest of my life. Maybe it won't. I do know that at the end of the day, decisions aren't permanent and they can always be undone, and you can change your mind, and that's okay. What I want to say is I've given up on this country. I've given up on Australia. I've given up on this dream of a white picket fence life, which, to be honest, to me, and it's different for everyone, seems fairly boring. For a while, I was envious of my friends that were, say, married or had kids or had bought houses, only realized later that, well, they would get divorced, they would then have to sell their houses, they would then end up more broke or unhappy than they were in the beginning. And I'm not saying that applies to everyone. But this white picket fence dream is constantly pushing that ideal. The ideal that you need to own a home, the idea that you need to keep doing something you hate to keep living a life you hate. That to me sounds soul destroying. A year ago, I had returned to Australia after trying to live overseas in Europe, and look, that failed for several reasons, visa issues being one of them, and that's a whole different story. Some things are completely out of our control. And don't get me wrong, Australia is not the only one going through this crisis. I know that it's just as expensive in Canada. The UK is falling apart. The UK is, don't get me wrong, it's kind of just like a worse version of Australia, but with bad weather. Although I will give it one thing, it does have history and culture, and the people from there can at least admit that the UK kind of sucks and there's a lot of things wrong with it. Where people in Australia, and I'm sorry if you're one of them, seem to have this tall poppy syndrome, where they just think this is the greatest country in the world, no matter what. And a lot of those people, maybe are older people, all people that are just really sold to this idea. I made a video almost a year ago saying I'm leaving Australia, and I got to admit, so I did leave, but just after I released that video, I was then offered a job, an opportunity that I thought would maybe give me that white picket fence dream, but all it did was made me miserable. Probably one of the worst decisions I have ever made. I realized working for myself, following my dreams, doing what I love, made me happy. And helping other people achieve their dreams and not seeing any success, only putting you back a step where you feel worse about your life, stuck in a place that wasn't living, that wasn't life. Something had to change. Now, we all know there is a huge rising cost of living in Australia, and it is becoming unbearable. It is a joke. It is almost laughable. I mean, not that I implore these things, I've mentioned it in my other video. For those who don't know, a price of a pack of cigarettes in Australia can now be up to $70. Now, I don't smoke, but come on, guys. I have paid $20 for a pint of beer. I know there are other pubs that have cheaper beers, but sometimes you go to your local and you ask for a beer and then they're like $20 and you're like, are you serious? Also, when I'd moved back, I was trying to find an apartment, and look, I had money in the bank. I was offering a year up front. No luck, because I didn't have the employment history or the rental history, because I'd been living overseas for 10 years. Now I really am leaving Australia. I mean, I left several times. I went on several holidays that I'd already planned, but Now, for good, I can say I'm going. There is nothing left good about this country. In the major cities, the traffic is awful. In the smaller towns, the crime is horrendous. Youth crime, especially. That's a whole other topic. Finding an apartment sometimes is next to impossible if you want something that's not a share apartment, and when you're an adult like me, you want your own space. What else can we ask for? Just a little bit of peace and privacy to do our own things, to live our lives in our way. I walk outside and the streets are boring. There's no atmosphere, there's no vibe.
Just had a random night out in Melbourne, and I noticed one thing. It's 2 a.m. I'm walking back to my car. There's no one around. It's peak summer, right? 2 a.m. Now, where I used to live in Berlin, the city would be heaving. People didn't even go out till 2 a.m. And this is like a ghost town. What happened to the nightlife? What happened to Australia?
Look, I'm not drinking at the moment, but when I lived in Europe, just to be able to go out and walk around with a beer in my hand just felt like freedom. Here in Australia, you do that and the police will stop you and take your beer away, or give you a fine, or both, or maybe even arrest you. Australia has become probably one of the biggest we call it a nanny state, but really it's a nanny country in the world. We have the strictest laws. We had the strictest lockdown, which ruined our country, ruined the economy, terrible politicians that haven't been good since the 80s. Not that I was old enough to vote then, but I'm old enough to make a decision, and I'm leaving, and I can't wait to go. I have a very exciting adventure planned for this year, and it's not just about moving. I'm actually making a new documentary, and after that documentary, I don't think I'll come back. I don't think even if I had $2 million, I would come back, or $5 million, I would come back, because, well, $5 million, I could buy an apartment in Spain, maybe another one in Greece, and, maybe 5 in Asia, and just live like a king. Whereas here, that gets you almost nothing these days. I mean, in the last suburb that I was living, a 2-bedroom house was $1.3 million for something close to the city. Now, while you can buy cheaper apartments out in the middle of nowhere, they're just these houses that all look the same. They have no soul. You walk down the street, everyone seems miserable. Everyone seems unhappy. I booked a flight to go to Japan. Now, I'm not saying I'm moving to Japan. This is just the start of my next documentary. And I'll get into that later if you want to follow my dreams. But this really is just an ode to do what makes you happy. If you're in a job that's not making you happy, well, you can leave that job. And if you're in a relationship that's not making you happy, you can leave that relationship. Sometimes it's different for other people. Maybe you've got kids. Maybe you've got a pet that you really love. You can choose to give up that pet to a better home. You can choose to stay in your ways and continue being miserable. Now, I'm not endorsing giving up pets. I'm just saying we all have options. We all have the same choices. It's just whether we choose to make those choices. And sometimes those decisions can be hard, but maybe those decisions will lead to freedom, will lead to a happier life. I have a different circumstance than most people. I did live overseas for a very long time, and I'll admit a lot of my friends that I did have moved on, moved out, and now struggling to survive, are in unhappy lives, working jobs they hate, or just trying to find a job because there isn't any, and being absolutely miserable. Now, I work for myself at the moment, and I love it. I had taken on a job, which is what kept me in Australia, and that wasn't making me happy. I like to be able to do things when I want to do them. I like to have control over my own life, because if you have control, only you can blame yourself for the things that go wrong. When you get other people involved and then things go wrong, maybe they put the blame on you, maybe you put the blame on them. But if it's just yourself, the only person that can let you down, well, is yourself. I find it's best to do my own thing and to be myself and have control of my own destiny. So, without further ado, in 2 weeks' time, I will be leaving this country. First, I'm taking a little trip to our close neighbour, New Zealand. A place I haven't been for in a while. I'm going to visit some relatives I have not seen in a long while. I'm going to visit some old friends I have not seen in a long while. And I'm excited to do that. And look, I know New Zealand is just as expensive as Australia, but that's just a pretty little going away thing. After that, I'm heading off on my great big adventure, and I'll be making a year-long documentary. And on that, it will be, and I know this as cliche as it sounds, a documentary of self-discovery. I will push myself, my body, my mind to the absolute limits. I will test myself beyond all means, and I will probably fail, but I'll die trying. And then after I've completed my new movie, my task, and if you don't know how seriously I take my movies, well, check out my channel. There's a couple on there. I like to go all in. And I think after that, I'm gonna continue doing what I love doing, and that's creating content. And I want to create content to inspire people. I love making music videos. I love telling stories. I love creating art. And this isn't about the money, even though YouTube does pay me a little bit of money, and that's great. I have 2 other channels that also pay me, and I've got a couple of others in the work and some websites and some little exciting things. But look, I just want to say to all the people out there, you have a choice. You have a decision. You are your own personal legend. Now, it's up to you whether you want to make some changes in your life, whether you want to give something a go on an adventure. Take a chance, because you might not know what will happen. Because if you don't take that chance, you're never gonna know. You're gonna be stuck in the same old job, or maybe the same old life, doing the same old thing. And then one day, you'll get older, and time passes really quickly. In fact, the older you get, the faster time passes, or at least the illusion of this. It's something I learned about recently. But I thought to myself, do I want to be an old man full of regrets, thinking, what if? And no, I don't. I'm still young. I'm still full of life. I'm still fit enough that I can go on these adventures. So I think I should do that. Anyway, if this has been inspirational to you, please leave a comment. If you have any big travel plans or adventures or new ideas in your life, where are you going? What is holding you back? Tell us. Let's discuss it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is Carl Travels, and I'll see you next time.